Anyway, I'll go ahead and get started just so we can stay on time. Once again, this is the crash course in the home automation and how AI saves me money in my display. I didn't realize I could. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I have too many monitors, so I don't know what I'm looking at. All right. My name is Bill Porter. Who I am, I'm a U.S. Let me start again. I'm an electrical engineer for the U.S. Navy and unmanned systems, which is their fancy word for robots. I'm an all-around geek. I started messing with Vixen 2.0 in 2011. It was not for my house because I did not have a house yet. It was actually for my wedding. My wedding suit and my wife's dress had Vixen sequences embedded in it and controllers, well before we had Wi-Fi or smaller controllers. And then finally, when I got a house in 2013, so this is my 10th year coming up, I went crazy and did lights on my house like I always thought I would. That's our photo from our recent Christmas right there in the middle. That's a slightly older photo, probably 5 years old now, of Christmas. And some of the things I do at work include, apparently I can't talk about that. But what I can talk about what I do at work is the reason why I'm hoping people are still sticking around when they heard I'm an engineer, because the engineers get a bad rap for being bad teachers, and I totally get that. Totally understand that. I was that way originally at first, but I've spent 12 years in STEM outreach through the Navy. I spent summers teaching high schoolers how to solder, high school teachers how to explain circuit theory. I was a science guy for a live show on a stage for many years. It's kind of a photo on the right there. And more recently, I actually designed and executed national robotics competitions for colleges and graduate level type research. In fact, I just came back from one a couple months ago. We're down in Sarasota, so you can kind of see, hey, I'm wearing a good shirt in that photo. Some of the stuff I do. So I've done a lot of teaching, or I've done a lot of STEM stuff, and I will hopefully say that's made me a better teacher. I also teach at the Florida Mega Mini every year in the beginners class for 2 days. So if you're here or know anyone that wants to get started and wants a good teacher for teaching that, I recommend coming to my class at the Florida Mega Mini. But today we are talking about AI. And what's AI? Well, artificial intelligence, the theory and development of computer systems' ability to perform a task that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, and decision making. And today we're going to be talking mostly about the visual perception. When I first wrote this presentation earlier this year, ChatGPT was still kind of new, so I had a quirky intro that I won't read through when I asked ChatGPT to write me an introduction to this class. So yeah, but I mean, you can freeze this frame later and read it if you want. I'd rather use my time talking about cool stuff for this time. So yeah, if you've played with ChatGPT or some of the visual programs now, AI is getting a little scary, but before Skynet takes over, what can we do with it? And that's why we're here today. Today, I'm going to do a quick sprint into some uses of AI in our Christmas display, mostly in regards to AI-based security camera systems. I'm also doing a quick sprint into home automation, because that's connected, or I'm going to put that piece together with the AI. I'm going to talk about Home Assistant, which is the FPP of home automation, FPP meaning Falcon Pipe Layer. And I hope that you guys walk away in an hour with enough to know what are the right questions to ask, even if you don't know everything I covered today, because an hour is a short time to really get someone fully up to speed. But hopefully you'll have enough to know what the questions are, how to ask the questions later. Yeah. So what I did last year, I used the vision-based artificial intelligence to control my snow machines and outdoor speakers. Basically, if there weren't any cars or people watching the display, the snow machines wouldn't go off. And that was my first year with snow machines, and I quickly put that together when I realized how expensive it is to run snow machines every night. If anyone here has tried to run snow machines every night, you realize that fluid cost adds up to a lot. So how did I do it? Well, it's complicated. So I'm going to break down this system into a couple pieces that we'll talk about individually. And I also want to be clear that when I show you something the way I did it, I'm not saying that's the best way for you to do it. I may try to give you advice about what the best way is, and it may be different than what I did. So I don't always say, do as I say, not as I do, I think is the easier way to say that. So let's start with the fact that we're talking about cameras here. And at the high level, what I wanted to do, which was detect people or detect cars watching my show, I had to set up a camera that would make the easier for the AI to see cars and people. Oddly enough, I already had a camera that was mostly framed correctly. And when I say framed correctly, if you notice the picture on the right has my house, and that bend in the road is kind of where I have people lined up to watch my show. I wanted to capture just that snippet of the road to process in the AI. So this is the first step. You take a camera, you point it at the street. The camera has a sort of AI that can recognize objects and report in real time. So like when it sees a car, it's 92% confident there it saw a car. It reports that it saw a car watching the show. I have an ohm automation hub that takes that information and triggers an action. So it takes, when it's triggered from my camera system, it'll turn on my speakers to play for the people standing outside. And that's it. So that's the end of my presentation. Now you know how to use AI in your show. Any questions? Okay, I'm assuming there's more questions even if you can't talk. Let's talk about more detail. That part's more fun when I can see the audience in front of me. So we're going to break it down into pieces of the camera or the AI section, the AI detection system, the protocols that talk between the systems, and the home automation integration itself. But I do want to talk about some forward thoughts first. And the first question I asked the audience is, what does smart mean to them? When you buy a smart appliance, do you feel like that all manufacturers use the word smart the same? Because I kind of feel like they don't, and no one really agrees on what the word smart means. But I will probably say what it should mean is that it means nothing, but for the most part that it means that the device can talk and thus be controlled either through Wi-Fi or through your network, right? If you buy a dehumidifier that says it's smart, that means it's going to attach to your network and hopefully be open to taking commands or input or control through that network. You still run into some issues where brands or products will be closed, even though they're smart. They won't be open to other people talking to them. And the way I found to always be, if I'm walking through Home Depot and want to see if this smart dehumidifier can be controlled by my home assistant, I use Google and say, name of smart device, space, home assistant, and usually the results right away. Mark says, smart appliance, internet connected device that wants to download updates and stop in 5 years. Yeah, that's another way to say it. But anyway, that's a quick way that I Googled to see if a smart device can actually be controlled, is if there's results that talk about people using it with Home Assistant. Now I'm going to talk about AI, or at least AI when it comes to vision processing. These are just some buzzwords that are involved in the creation of this AI. You don't need to know it to use the AI, but if you ever start seeing stuff, people talking about it, at least you understand what this is. This is all part of how AI is quote unquote trained. Training an AI takes a large data set, aka if you're trying to teach an AI to recognize a car, you feed it thousands of pictures that someone has gone and drawn a box around a car in that picture and labeled it car. So that's what a data set is. It's a large collection of labeled example shots. This AI is going to teach itself to be able to look at cars. This is this concept called supervised machine learning, where a human supervised this machine learning. When you buy an AI-powered product, this has already been done, usually by the manufacturer or some entity, and resolved in the files that's stored inside that product for that AI-powered product to work. I'm using an open source AI called codeproject.ai that has already been trained on common labels like cars and people and cats and dogs and other stuff like that. Oh, that reminds me, I had a funny video I want to show you later too. So anyway, let's get on with it. The first example is what I did first, which is for Halloween, which is I set up my camera to trigger my outdoor speakers when the AI recognized a person. So if it recognized a car, they're going to use their FM radio. But if a person walks up, it'll recognize the person and turn on my speakers. I found that even when I built a push to here button and lit it up and put a sign next to it, there was a good portion of people that wouldn't pay attention and would just sit there and watch my show with no sound and not actually go hit the button. So I was kind of like, you know what, this year the button's not coming out. I've been playing around with this stuff in my cameras. I'm just going to make the AI detect people and turn on the speakers so I don't have to rely on them to look for the sign or press the button. To get started, again, we're talking about picking out the camera. It's got to be a camera that frames just the area that you expect people to be standing and looking at your show. You want to kind of eliminate your light show from the camera. If anyone has tried looking at their motion-based security cameras when you have a light show running, you probably got 1,000 to tens of thousands of false alerts because a light show lights looking to a camera looks like motion. So you kind of want to pick a camera that has a zoom, that if you're going to set it far back into your display, so that way you can zoom in and just look at your audience and not the light show. This will give a minimum of errors for the AI, and it's like, what do you mean errors? Well, AIs aren't perfect, just like the humans that train them. And here's some examples where this one classified a fence post as a person. This time it classified that rock as a person. And I got to reshare for 1 second because I don't think I shared with sound, or I need to turn sound on, share sound. Okay, optimizing video. Because this next video clip is actually very celebrated in the expert AI sort of developers group from this movie, because it correctly makes fun of and shows the problems with AI and errors. So maybe someone will recognize this movie clip.
Munchie, don't be scared.
Why are you clutching that large feral hog like it's a child?
That's not a feral hog. It's Munchie.
What? Is that a dog or... Dog, pig, dog, pig, dog, pig, pig, dog. Loaf of bread, system error. Come on, guys, it's a dog.
That is an accurate characterization of the plights or the errors you get when you use sort of this tagged AI type system, where it just will go crazy sometimes and miscategorize something. But anyway, now that you have a camera, now what? Well, I had a full camera security system already running. And when I say that, I mean it was a DIY put together security system, but the DVR part of it was software called Blue Iris, which ran on a computer. It's not open source. It does have a subscription fee, but it's fairly open in the sense that there's lots of plugins and there's a lot of documentation for using plugins with it. And some of the plugins being use of free AI software to make your DVR be AI aware, which is what I did. Now, this is an example of the Blue Iris security system. Now, I've had this for as long as I've had the house. There are products nowadays that have AI built in, and we'll talk about one in a minute. But since I already had this, I was using it. I actually will say I may lean back to recommending it, depending on what you want to do with AI in your house. The problem with some of the commercial products is they may not expose the tags you want or the objects you want to detect. I've recently started playing around with detecting dogs and cats because I'm getting grumpier, I guess. And the commercial system I'm about to talk about, which is Ubiquiti, some may recognize it from their nice networking and Wi-Fi type stuff. They do AI in the cameras with tags that include vehicles and people. So you could still do my examples of activating sound or activating the snow machines using their system. It'll be a little bit more plug and play, less work to set up. But if you want to start playing with custom tags, like I started playing with one that identifies when a package carrier is holding a package, walking up to my door will create an alert to my phone through my automation system to say, you've just had a package delivered, because I recognized that this was the UPS truck and he had a package in his hand. When you want to start playing customizations like that, this may not have what you need enabled yet, because this was pretty closed in the amount of third-party plugins or work that it has. But if you just want to, if you know you only want to do humans and vehicles, it does do that, and it does do it. It does hold your hand doing it much better, and it integrates with the home automation more seamlessly, which may be a plus for some people. So why do these security camera systems add AI? Well, security camera systems always kind of sucked for anyone that's ever had one. And they sucked in the sense that they only had basic motion detection. And every time you try to set up alerts to your phone and you get alert, you look at the video and you realize that wasn't a person, that was just a bag blowing across my camera. I wish I didn't get all these false positives. They used to use technologies like virtual fences, where alerts would only fire if motion goes across one way, etc. But really, they've always sucked. And by adding AI, we're going to have no more false positives, or 99% reduction of false positives, because shadows and plants moving in the wind now will get ignored and you won't get those alerts. And you only get alerted when it's an actual person. So if you're a Ring doorbell or Ring camera kind of person, that's using AI, because they're using AI to sort of detect people and not just alert you every time a tree moves. I believe. I don't actually have Ring cameras, but that's what I hear. They're pretty decent at, so they must be doing some sort of AI like that. So yeah, pixel shows and security cameras. Pixel light does wreak havoc on motion sensing camera systems. I got a question in a second. So you want to try to make sure if you can frame your image like I was talking about, so you don't have any props in your frame. Even with AI, you get lots of emotion alerts can cause problems. Why is that? Well, at least with Blue Iris, the way the AI works, because AI processing is very power and resource intensive. So what it would do is it would wait for a regular old-fashioned motion trigger, like a bag blowing through your camera, and then it would fire some frames of that camera into the AI, and then the AI would spit back what it processed in the image. So if you have a lot of false positives just because of the motion of the light, you're going to have a lot of processing power going into nothing, because it's going to keep triggering the AI to look at the picture again, because it keeps getting the motion data. You keep seeing motion because of your pixel lights. So that even with the AI, you still want to do a better job of making sure you're framing your camera to look just at your audience, and it doesn't capture any of your light show in it to your best of your ability. Some of the other lessons learned that I talk about Blue Iris, it doesn't have the one way to communicate to other systems, in this case home assistants. You kind of have to make your own protocol in some sense, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Where something like Ubiquiti did have a built-in home assistant plugin, so you didn't have to define a communication protocol in a sense. Barry has asked, how have I liked Code Project over DeepStack with Blue Iris? I haven't upgraded the Code AI yet. Well, DeepStack's more or less sunset from my understanding. So the support's gone, the updates are gone, and everyone, I think Blue Iris now will try to auto install Code Project if you install a new version of Blue Iris to this point. So at this point, everyone's just moved on to Code Project. So yeah, you gotta probably bite that bullet soon and just change it. So Blue Iris supports MQTT, but I had to come up with my own scheme. And by that, I wrote my own communication structure, sort of. When the AI saw a human, it would send human to this certain MQTT topic, or if it saw a car, it would send it to this topic as well. So everyone understands that, right? Or are you all looking at me now through our monitors and saying, what the heck is MQTT? Well, fine, let's talk about that now. Logical, so let's break down the logical flow of this system. So I'm sure some of you are probably more visual kind of people, so I'm going to sort of drew some cartoons today to talk about how this works, right? Basic first part we've already talked about is you have an AI running on a computer watching your security cameras. When that AI sees people, it can say, I saw people, right? That's the first building block we've talked about already. What MQTT is the language. It can then go tell something that it saw people, right? Because it's great that the AI saw a person, but now what are we going to do with that information? Well, we're going to speak MQTT to something else. So let's dive quickly into what MQTT is. MQTT stands for Message Queuing Telemetry Transport. I never remember that, so I'm glad I can read it off my own slide. It's extremely simple and lightweight messaging protocol. It's got a subscribe and publish design to it, designed for limited devices with networks with high latency, low bandwidth, and unreliable, aka anything in Ken's house, which is why he's on that picture. For your old school computer nerds, think of it as a Windows registry, but with network access. I try to explain to people that haven't learned MQTT yet that this is the Windows registry concept, where you have keys, and the only difference is now that you can access the same registry from multiple systems on the network. So, of course, they got to have their own names for everything. So let's talk about some names real quick. The broker is the server that contains the MQTT database. Again, think of this like a Windows registry. Client is any device or system that wants to access that data. Topic is a piece of data in the MQTT database, or like the registry key. Publish is the act of a client sending or changing a topic. And subscribe is the act of a client informing the broker that it wants to be passed updates to that topic. So let's visualize that for the visual people here. Your broker is in the center. That's your MQTT server. You've got something like a thermometer sensor that publishes the temperature. You've got a computer client over here that wants to know what that temperature is, so it has to subscribe to it, and then the broker will send it updates. That is how MQTT works. If you've got more questions, Barry might be able to answer them because I'm not an expert on it. I just know how to hopefully explain it well. But those kind of questions we'll probably save for the end, but that's your crash course in MQTT. What I needed to know to learn MQTT to set up my system is I had to set up a broker. That's the server. I had to set up Blue Iris to publish some topics, aka when the camera pointed at my street detects a human, set this key to true. And then I used home automation system to subscribe to that same topic to get notified when that happened. And then that home automation system would turn on my outdoor speakers. What home automation system? All right, so we've covered the camera, the DVR software with the AI, how that communicates to Home Assistant, which is what we're about to talk about through MQTT. And that's the last piece of this puzzle, right? So there is the full system diagram: camera, AI, Home Assistant we'll talk about, which triggers a Wi-Fi socket, more or less, and turns on my speakers. There's your system diagram. Home Assistant, literally the best thing I've ever seen. Think of it as the FPP of home automation. In fact, it runs on a Raspberry Pi. So if you're ready to start getting your hands wet, your feet wet with home automation, go ahead and go buy another Pi while you can, because that's what it takes to run Home Assistant. I actually run it in a virtual machine because Pis are rare at the moment, or were last year, the year before. But yes, we're talking Home Assistant now. Home Assistant is completely open source, just like X-Lights. It's a home automation hub. It connects all the things. That's the best description I can give people. Home Assistant is super powerful because it literally just connects everything. Because the problem with all these smart systems out here is your Zigbee-based bulb won't talk to my Wi-Fi-based oven if I wanted those connected for some reason. My home, I realized, had lots of smart things, but none of them were talking to each other. I was just having to pull up one of 20 different apps to be able to to do something with that one type of thing. Home Assistant solves all those problems. Home Assistant also gets you the wife acceptance factor, because now she doesn't need to understand how there's 20 different apps on her phone to control different things. It gives her one app that she can control everything in my house now, even though I have a huge mix of brands and different types of smart devices. It also lets you do things like script automations between these systems. Kind of like, if a certain MQTT topic changes, turn on my Yamaha smart stereo in the garage. And light bulb, that's where we're going. It's just me and Barry are just shooting geek talk in the chat. I don't think anyone else is listening anymore. I put them all asleep. But yes, Proxmox is also the best. I'm with you there, Barry. We're gonna have to spend a night talking to each other, I think. Okay, here's the problem with Home Assistant. I can't see everyone raise their hands, but let's be honest. X-Lights had a learning curve. It is the most powerful sequencing software out there, but it also came at the cost of a learning curve. Home Assistant is way worse than the learning curve with X-Lights, but that shouldn't scare you. And just an example of, I'm not a great person for watching video documentaries or reading stuff. I'm usually pretty good at learning stuff just by trying it, and trying to find out that in order to turn on a switch in a script, I had to call service_turn_on before I could even do that. It was just, that's the kind of things that wasn't very intuitive. And I had to Google things for days. So if you're a type of learner that likes to dive in and not read any manuals, you're gonna have a hard day. And I can say that as one of those people. I had to break down and read some manuals or watch some videos to learn Home Assistant. So going through my Home Assistant, show integrations and automations. All right, so I think we're gonna pause slideshow for a bit and start showing you some real things. 1 second. Oh, okay. You guys just got really talkative in chat for a second. It kind of freaked me out. I thought maybe I just wasn't seeing chat this whole time. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to pull up my Home Assistant interface. Oh dear, and you're going to see how I was making my slideshow 5 seconds ago. Anyway, this is Home Assistant. Hopefully everyone can see me. I can't see myself, so I don't know where my video went or my chat. You love the Skull Santa behind me. I do love it too. This is my outside tab. So you'll notice I have an FPP master widget in this out setting right here. I've got some other controls like my pool pump, which I actually need to turn off. So I'll go ahead and turn off my pool pump right now. And I've got a couple, you can actually integrate some camera systems directly into Home Assistant. And actually that brings up a good point. If you follow other tutorials that I can't link for you because I've never looked at them, there is a way to set up AI on Home Assistant running on a Pi. That way you can eliminate some of the pieces of the puzzle I laid out where you just have a Raspberry Pi running with Home Assistant connected directly to an IP camera doing all this work as well. That is something you could do. I just don't, and I don't have any good knowledge that I could pass on for you to go find. But if you Google it, you should be able to find it, because that's the best thing about Home Assistant is you can Google almost anything and find a pretty good walkthrough, a tutorial on how to do it. So I'll show you some of my scripts real quick. This by far has been my most useful script I've ever written involving my light show. And I wasn't even prepared to think that's what it would turn into. But basically, when FPP stops playing, it'll turn on all my big security lights for me in my house and my driveway lights. And just the ability to sit out in my show when I'm tweaking something and hitting stop in the FPP interface on my phone and having all my lights turn on so I can actually see what I'm doing was unexpectedly useful. That I didn't even write that to do that. I wrote that just to turn my lights on and off when the show starts and stops for the night, like normally, but just debugging something, like debugging why a prop is flickering and being able to hit play and then hit stop and my lights come back on so I can see what I'm doing without actually having to do that was amazing. So like, here's the opposite of that. When FPP Master starts to play, turn off my security lights and turn off my driveway lights. That automation was just extremely useful. But here's the one that talks about my stereo. I'm gonna have to re-enable it because I disabled it. And I can actually enable the timer too. So yeah, this is the visual interface for writing scripts, which is great. Conditions are things that stop, the trigger is when an MQTT message has been received. The condition says, just do this during the nighttime when I expect my show to be running. And this is where it turns on my front yard speakers. And I'll go through how I did that in a second. But I can test that and says, yes, for right now, you are between 5:08 and 9 p.m. And I'm gonna bring up my outside tab again. Here is my front yard speakers, currently turned off. That's what gray means. And I'm going to cheat a bit because there is no one outside right now in my house to trigger the AI. But I can have Blue Iris test the MQTT link for me real quick. So I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to say, hey, test this right now. There is a person the AI sees. Oh. And I spelled person wrong. And now it's not working for some reason. That's fun. This is why even when you test things, when you go to do it in the show, it doesn't work. Yeah. All right, well, I was going to show you my stereo turning on, but for some reason it is claiming to not like the way I test that. I have to go run past the camera real quick, make you guys believe me. VWs all around, yes. If you don't know me, I am the size of James. I am a giant guy, and VWs are the only brand that makes me comfortable inside my car or SUV. Okay, well, I can't show that at the moment. But I can show you, we sort of looked at the script. I'm not sure why this is not working. This makes me very sad. I'm sure I'm doing something like, is this the wrong camera? No, it's the right camera. Alerts on alert. Person. One action skip disabled or profile source filters. Yeah, I don't know why. It's not working. Well, so what I'm failing to do currently is I was going to show you Blue Iris manually publishing the AI detection into MQTT for me, but the mechanism to force Blue Iris to do that is rejecting that command. So let's see, we can probably pull up when it did it earlier. I was playing with it today. It was actually triggering all day today because I had it turned on. Okay, well, since like, so yeah, here's like an example of when it turned on. This is the debugging sort of screen where you can say, okay, the MQTT was published. The time was correct, so I went ahead and turned on the stereo. And what I was hoping to show you is that you'd see this happen automatically. It would turn on blue, because what I just did, though manually, not the way I wanted to show you guys, was turn on my speakers. What my speakers are, you can do a couple different ways, right? The best thing about Home Assistant is you're not tied to a certain brand or way something works. You could have a dumb stereo that just has a smart Wi-Fi switch plugged into it and turn that on or off. Or you can have what I have. I love Yamaha receivers. Yamaha stereo and home theater receivers have they're smart, and their smarts are actually really nice because it lets a lot of other companies use it, including Home Assistant. They're also great because there's you can have Alexa play it directly and control it directly, which is kind of nice. But I'm able to this is literally the same dual output receiver that I was able to set up a zone 2, which is my front yard speakers, and I was able to tell it just turn on my front yard speakers that's plugged into my FPP for sound, and that's how I controlled my sound. So I did it a little bit cleaner than using like a Wi-Fi switch for manual stereo. So snow, how did this, we'll look at more of that in a second. Oh, really? Hold on, I guess hit for it again. Project flow. But you're probably mad because I promised you a money-saving tip, right? So that's what everyone, I sort of already implied what it was because I had forgotten I was supposed to not talk about that until the end. But yes, the money-saving tip was the snow machines. Let me make sure. Oh, good. I'm still doing sound. I did snow machines for the first time this last year. Actually, I had 2 snow machines. I went from 0 to 2. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I bought a snow machine and then I went to Christmas Expo and then I saw this really cute snowman snow machine, so I had to have it. So now I had 2 snow machines. And I calculated quickly that I was using $25 a day in fluid. And that was only having it run for like 60 seconds through my for 2 different songs in my 6-song show. And for how many times that repeated, that's how much fluid I was using. I was burning $25 a day in fluid. And it was really, what really hurt is when I'd look out and there were no cars in the street at that particular time, and no one was out there, and my snow machine was running, burning that money. And I said, no, I can fix this. We have the technology. And that's where I upgraded from just controlling the sound to actually controlling the snow machine. So the way I did this is Home Assistant reads what sequence is playing on FPP. Oh, that's what I wanted to show you. So FPP can integrate with Home Assistant. It's great. When it was a particular song or particular 2 songs, which was Do You Want to Build a Snowman? When that song was the one playing, it publish an MQTT message that forces Blue Iris to run a few frames through AI. Remember we talked about earlier that AI only runs when motion's triggered? Well, if people are just sitting in a car not moving, the AI wouldn't run to process, is there a car there? So I found a way to have MQTT go back to Blue Iris and say, hey, even though there's no motion, can you process a couple of frames of the AI and tell me if there's cars or pedestrians? This is from the whole motion sensor issue. If Blue Iris saw a human or a vehicle, it would then publish a message back saying, yes, I see a human or a vehicle in this camera view right now. When Home Assistant got that message back, it would then activate a smart plug to have my snow machines plugged in. So this is a view of all that stuff technically, right? There's the script and the GUI language on the graphical view on the left and the text views on the right. But basically it was, when this song is playing, go publish a topic, wait a few minutes, wait a few seconds for Blue Iris to come back with an answer. If it saw a person, go ahead and turn on the snow machine, and then leave it on for 60 seconds and turn it off. And this is a video of that. So this is the end of the previous song. The song's about to start. I'm standing in the street filming, so I'm the person shooting the song. Right now, this is the other song that's triggered for. Processing the image. There's so much to go out. But that was, I know there's not much to see, but that was the AI turning on my snow machines. There wasn't someone in my house doing it. That was the script running to say, yes, we see that big goofy person standing in the street. And because he somewhat classifies as a human, go ahead and turn on the snow machines for the show. It worked great, like scary great. In fact, the story I didn't tell my neighbors I was doing the audio one. I just sort of enabled this whole detect when a person's walking by and turn on audio thing, and just waited for my neighbors to be walking down the street and the sound would come on every time they walked by. It took them about 3 days before they asked me, am I just sitting in a window turning the sound on in them? And I went, no, I'm not doing it, but there's an AI doing it. When it came to the snow machines, I never really optimized for time. I wasn't trying to hit an exact note in the song, but if you needed to do that, you might not do it the way I did it, or you might find that it works great for that too. This was just, you could use an automation to gate that and trigger it from an AC controller directly, would let you hit that timing. I did not hit that timing type myself, but I was happy with what I could do. Some of the other things I've used AI for that are just, that are not, excuse me, some of the other things I've used home automation for is I've built my own, I have a big above ground pool. I have a couple of different ways to heat my pool, which sounds odd being in Florida, but I'm in North Florida. It actually gets cold quickly here. So I have a heat pump, plus I have thermal pads on my roof. I ended up setting up rules for when to divert water to my solar pads based on my weather station data or based on the temperature of the pool. And if the solar pads couldn't keep up with the heating of the pool, then bring on the heat pump, but only bring on the heat pump when the outdoor air temperature meant the heat pump could operate efficiently, yada, yada. That's sort of the custom box I created to be controlled. That box on the left is just an ESP8266 based relay board you can buy for like $10 on Amazon. And then you flash it with the open source firmware that talks to Home Assistant. So that way the relays on that board are just look like toggle switches on Home Assistant. So Home Assistant runs my pool, which is great. There's an example of the stereo that I use both in my house and in my garage. Again, I like Yamaha for I like their version of Smart because it gives you a lot of control over about certain inputs go to certain outputs and it integrates well with Home Assistant. A useful automation that worked well, resonated well when I mentioned it in Florida. You know, I have a dehumidifier for the few months that the AC is turned off and we're just sort of sitting on, with the AC not running, it'd still be very humid in our house, but dehumidifiers are loud. So whenever my stereo reported that it was turned on and playing TV in my living room, it would automatically turn off my dehumidifier. So it wouldn't be distracting us from watching TV, and then vice versa, when the TV turned off, the dehumidifier turned back on. Other helpful automations, a lot of my outdoor lights are tied to the AI detections in my security cameras. And I found that's way less false positives from old-fashioned motion lights. I have lights all around the perimeter of my house, but only have one area that has motion lights. Well, since I have cameras all around my house, now all my lights are motion lights. It's just they're done through AI and the Home Assistant connection as opposed to being motion detectors in the lamps. Another good one is I have an old-fashioned ADT security alarm system, and I have what's called an eyes-on board that I added to it that lets you basically self-monitor your system without paying ADT anymore. And guess what? It had a Home Assistant plugin. So now that I had Home Assistant set up and my eyes-on interface to my old ADT alarm system had a plug-in to Home Assistant, now whenever all my windows and all my doors can be used as sensors to trigger automations. So I set up one where if my wife or any of my kids open a window because they think, hey, it's kind of nice outside, it turns off my air conditioner automatically. So I don't run into the situation where my wife cracked a window and the AC has been running all day and we've just been burning money letting the AC go out the window. Now, if you open a window, the AC turns off. You close all the windows, the AC turns back on, all automatically. And it's the security contacts through that board, through my ADT alarm that reports to Home Assistant that gives me that information. This is one of my backyard decorations that I automated when it turned on and off. This was from dumpster diving after we got hit by Category 5 hurricane. I've always wanted one of these, found one in the trash, fixed it up and mounted it to my backyard. And obviously that would be distracting to have running all the time. So whenever my backyard door opens, it comes on for me. And as soon as the cameras don't see any motion or the AI doesn't see any humans in the backyard for a certain amount of time, it turns back off. Basically, what it does is once everything can be controlled in one place, meaning Home Assistant, the possibilities of interconnecting the stuff together are almost endless. Like you could do goofy things, you could do things that you didn't realize were nice, like the whole dehumidifier shutting off when you turn on the TV, etc. Like this is the first time that I feel like we are living the future they show in the movies that we've never gotten to because no industry can agree on one standard for everything. But Home Assistant comes in and it allows us to glue everything together so we can get closer to that reality where things just talk to each other. More AI ideas that have or have not been done. I think I finally found someone that's done this, training a model to detect only the mail truck. So that way you get a special alert on your phone when it says, hey, your mail's been delivered today. I could tell because I saw the mail truck drive by kind of thing. You can do this with Blue Iris already. You can train it to your face. So your house can recognize when you are walking up to it and open the door. Maybe you're a little worried that someone could just walk up with a picture of your face. So maybe you can do two-factor, where when your phone reports to Home Assistant that you're now within your geofence and the AI sees your face approaching the door, then it opens for you. That way it's at least two factors. Someone has to have your phone and have your face to open your door. There's all sorts of wacky ideas that you can do with AI and automation to make your house cool, frankly. So since I teased you about it earlier, this is the actual end of my presentation. I know we've had some questions. Let me read through these questions real quick, and then we can open up the mic for everybody. Mark, oh, good. Let me scroll up. You guys started talking. That's good. I thought you just didn't like me.
Yeah,
Yes,
let me know. Let me know when you want me to open the mics.
All right, let me get through the text questions first.
Yep.
Can conditions float with sun changes? Yes, I believe there are plugins or ways to set up sunset, sunrise type times. Yes, VWs are awesome. Oh, I can go to developer and okay, so Barry was helping me try to show the activation of the states. Do you have your MQTT server running on the same Pi as Home Assistant? Yes. So if you Google Home Assistant MQTT, there's a lot of good guides for setting that up. And yes, you run the MQTT broker on Home Assistant. And Barry did say that, so there you go. You should try making your own fluid, super easy and a whole lot cheaper. Yeah, but my time is also expensive. I have 2 kids now. I don't know. You're probably right, but I also just don't have a lot of time. Oh, Dan was here. FYI, every FPP instance has a Mosquito broker installed, just not enabled or configured. So apparently FPP itself has a broker, which I think is the same broker I use in Home Assistant, which is Mosquito. So you could use the one built into FPP, or you could follow the guides to install one directly into Home Assistant. I would probably slightly recommend doing that only if you ever want to use MQTT for other connections. For example, my example of my pool equipment that runs off Home Assistant, that also uses MQTT to talk to Home Assistant. So if I was running MQTT on the FPP, the broker on the FPP, that would have to always be on for that connection to work. FPP has MQTT client that you can subscribe to the broker. That's correct. This is exactly how I have it set up. It's just that my broker is my Home Assistant setup. It's not my FPP setup. Again, broker means server. There was a snow machine question that was answered. This is an awesome session.
Great show as always, Bill.